I'm Ashley Cook.
And I'm Shadi Scruggs, and we are interviewing Reverend Orlando Dow on the topic of Black church history. Can you please say your name and spell it?
My name is Orlando Ray Dial, O-R-L-A-N-D-O, just like Orlando in Florida, and Dial, D-I-A-L, just like the soap.
Okay, we have some questions to ask you.
Where were you born?
I was actually born in a little place called Magazine Point, Alabama. It's a community that's a suburb of Mobile, Alabama.
And where do you live now?
Now I live here in Iowa City, Iowa.
How long have you lived in Iowa?
I've lived in the state of Iowa since 1979 and in Iowa City for the last 3 years.
What brought you to Iowa?
Went to Central College in Pella, Iowa. I grew up in Los Angeles. My family moved from Alabama to Los Angeles in 1960, so I don't have very many memories of Alabama other than knowing that's where I was born, but I was raised in Los Angeles and went from there to Central College in Pella, Iowa.
Have you been involved in any civil rights organizations?
Yes, I have. While living in Waterloo, Iowa, I was the president of the NAACP, the Black Hawk County chapter, and when you're part of a local NAACP, then automatically you're part of that state NAACP, and then the regional and then the national NAACP.
What was segregation like for you?
For me, it was I've seen it in several forms. One was what we oftentimes call de facto. It wasn't written in the law that it has to be this way, where if you were, say, 1950, I'll use Jackson, Mississippi, there may be a sign that says colored water fountain, colored restroom, white only, that kind of thing. So there is written out. But in other places, it's de facto, meaning that it happens even though it's not written out. Everybody understands this is the door you use, this is where you can or cannot go. And in many big cities like the Los Angeleses, the Bostons, the Detroits, they had what was called de facto segregation. Everybody knew this was the neighborhood where black people lived, this was the neighborhood where nobody black had ever bought a house, those kinds of things. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that old play, A Raisin in the Sun. It's there was no law saying they couldn't buy that house, but nobody black had ever lived there, so that would be de facto segregation. Black people were supposed to live in this neighborhood and white people were supposed to live in that neighborhood. So I've seen both growing up in Los Angeles. LA City schools didn't officially desegregate with an organized effort until, like 1994. Kindergarten through 12th grade, I never had a classmate that wasn't black or Spanish speaking. I can only think of 3 classmates that weren't black that were actually in a class that I had. There were no white students in any elementary I attended, junior high, or high school.
Can you describe the role of the African American church in your community?
The church has always had a significant role because, one, it's the only place that the black community would own and that would be controlled by the community. If you have, say, a community center, you may be getting funding from the state or federal government, and if they take the money back, you can't use that center. But the black church would be owned, operated, and controlled by that congregation, so you didn't have to worry about what you were going to say, when you were going to say it, how you were going to say it, or who might be listening. You had the keys, so if you wanted to meet, you could use the church, and you may recall that when Martin Luther King Jr., most of the major rallies took place in a church. And they didn't have to get permission from the city to use a school or a building. They could just call that preacher and say, we need to meet. And the preacher could say, okay, you can use my church. And they would then have access to the church, and they could plan there, and it was private property. So the black church has always been central. For that reason, the black church often has soup kitchens, daycare centers, homeless shelters. It would provide services that before 1968, if you didn't, the government didn't provide those services within the black community. The church would. So the church would have like a Boys and Girls Club, rec center kind of thing in its church basement, a place for teenagers to have dances, people to have, or just to gather for anything. So the church did all of that. So it was the hub of the black community.
How has the civil rights movement affected you?
It's not a difficult question. It's got so many different parts to it. The civil rights movement made it possible, not only for me, but for everybody, black and white, to live differently, travel differently, see different. And when I say differently, to see the whole experience. When I mentioned going kindergarten through 12th grade, the schools I went to were large schools. My high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. When I graduated, there were 643 in my graduating class. So there are a couple thousand students in my high school. Imagine a school of 2,000 in Los Angeles. Nobody white going to that school. So all the black students, none of us had any white peers. We had nobody white our age that we ever talked to. We didn't go to school with them. So we had experiences now. We had swimming team at my school, diving team, baseball, tennis, gymnastics, all of that. So I grew up seeing black people do all of those activities, debate club, honor society, all of that. But at the same time, when we would compete in debate tournaments against all white schools, you go in there wondering, okay, what do they know that we don't know? And they're over there wondering, what do they know that we don't know? So the civil rights movement allowed us, by going to school together, to have those conversations early on in life. So it created some opportunities that hadn't existed for people before. You could even, you could buy a house in places where you couldn't buy a house before. The city we're in right now, Iowa City, the home of the University of Iowa, it is the oldest, the first land grant college where the state says, here's some land, build a school that allow black people and white people to go to school in the same, live in the same dorm. Couldn't live on the same floor, but they could live in the same dorm. Now, or today, we say, that's stupid, that sounds like segregation. Back then, just even being in the same school building was considered liberal, radical, wow. And so the civil rights movement then in the 60s kind of helped break down barriers in many of the other schools throughout the country. Now you turn on the TV and you'll see, you probably don't watch college football, but I love college football. You turn on TV and you'll see Ole Miss playing football against, say, Auburn. In 1968, nobody black would go to Auburn or Ole Miss or the University of Alabama. And now they may have a black quarterback, the coach may be black, those kinds of things. So civil rights legislation, the movement helped open all of those doors.